and from 2015. It is easy to hate a Conservative regardless of policy. A bad policy pushed onto New South Wales Government by Clover Moore as Sydney Mayor is the solution to traffic problems, tramways. Only the $2 billion project will implement a tramway, removing 220 buses from the roads and provide a worse service than those buses. But although it was high on the independent Green wish list, being an expensive and bureaucratic solution, rejected over 50 years ago for the reason it is bad now, the Conservative Government of New South Wales is denounced by journalist Miranda Devine for their part in building it. Miranda is correct to denounce the policy, and New South Wales Government bears some responsibility, but the machinations of the Lord Mayor has been to make a good outcome impossible. On another issue, Mr Abbott, Prime Minister, has announced another effective policy involving unemployed people working. Work is essential for all people, providing an income and purpose as well as dignity. Without work, people lose essential skills. Anxiety related to poverty is crippling, even if the person worrying is not poor. But Mr Abbott referred to unemployed and the work provided as try before you buy, and naturally his haters and others inflate the words to mask the policy. The Australian Labor Party are suffering and indecisive. In his economic reply to the budget last week, the Australian Labor Party Shadow Treasurer Bowen announced he would approve some cuts to spending, but proceeded with unfunded spending in health and education that could well prevent Australia having either in the future, because it would be unaffordable. The Australian Labor Party want to block any cuts, but don't know if the budget is an election budget. They know if they don't pass some cuts before an election, they will look bad. They also know if they block all cuts, then the press will blame the government. What they will never do is act in the public interest, but they are indecisive because they can't even work out their own self-interest. In a slow news day, a mixed martial arts fighter was scolded by a sheriff in the United States for stopping a robbery and hog-tying the thief. The fighter hadn't known that the robber wasn't armed, and the robber wasn't armed and lost his free bout with an MMA fighter. Also, a survey showed people somewhere average 8.5 hours a week in front of Facebook, which seems pathetic, as I average more each day sitting down. A victim of pedophilia has denounced Cardinal George Pell, and it appears as if the reason for doing so is because the relative who abused him has died. What happens to the victim is appalling. It gives license to make headlines? No. Released files from the U.S. military shows they were concerned about an organization like ISIS, death cult, arising in 2012. But Obama, who was privy to it, played down later and, in failing to address it, fanned it. On this day in 325, the First Council of Nicaea, the first ecumenical council of the Christian Church, was held. The council was convened by Constantine I. It was the council which defined Arianism and showed it was not a biblical or canonical. It answered without specifying the question of the Trinity. In 491, Empress Ariadne married Anastasius I. The widowed Augusta was able to choose her successor for the Byzantine throne after the Zheng, late emperor, died of dysentery. 526, an earthquake killed about 250,000 people in what is now Syria and Antiochia. 685, the Battle of Dunkane was fought between a Pictish army under King Brede III and the invading Northumbrians under King Ecgfrith, who were decisively defeated. In 794, King Ethelbert II of East Anglia visited the royal Mercian court at Sutton Walls with a view to marrying Princess Ethelfrith. He was taken captive and beheaded. In 1217, the Second Battle of Lincoln was fought near Lincoln, England, resulting in the defeat of Prince Louis of France by William Marshal, 1st Earl of Pembroke. The defeat was so decisive that the sacking of the town loyal to France was later called Lincoln Fair. In 1293, King Sancho IV of Castile created the study of general schools of Alcala. In 1449, the Battle of Alforbeia was fought, establishing the House of Braganza as a principal royal family of Portugal. In 1497, John Cabot set sail from Bristol, England, on his ship Matthew, looking for a route to the west. Other documents give a May 2nd date. 1498, Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India when he arrived. At Kozhikode, previously known as Calicut, India, 1520, the massacre at the festival of Toxcati took place during the fall of Tenochtitlan, resulting in turning Aztecs against the Spanish. The action was a war atrocity and probably instigated by the unarmed celebrants wearing gold. 1521, Ignatius Loyola was seriously wounded in the Battle of Pamplona. He had had his leg hit by a cannonball and took up the work of a priest in place of that of a soldier. He founded the Jesuits. In 1570, cartographer Abraham Ortelius issued Theatrum Orbis Terranum, the first modern atlas. In 1609, Shakespeare's sonnets were first published in London, perhaps illicitly, by the publisher Thomas Thorpe. In 1631, the city of Magdeburg in Germany was seized by forces of the Holy Roman Empire, and most of its inhabitants massacred in one of the bloodiest incidents in the 30 Years' War. The book and movie The Last Valley included this detail as a plot point, with a killer line from Michael Caine: "We all have things we wish to forget. Magdeburg was mine. What is yours?" To Omar Sharif. 1645, the Manchurian Qing army occupied the city of Yangzhou, and the president and the residents were massacred for 10 days. After the fall of Beijing and northern China to the Manchus in 1644, Yangzhou remained under control of the short-lived Ming loyalist government of the so-called Hongwan Emperor, based in Nanjing. The Qing forces led by Prince Dodo reached Yangzhou in the spring of 1645, and despite the heroic efforts of its chief defender, Shi Kefa, the city fell on May the 20th, 1645. After a brief siege, a 10-day massacre followed, in which, as it was traditionally alleged, 800,000 people died. Shi Kefa himself was killed by the Manchus as well, after he refused to switch his allegiance to the Qing regime. In 1775, Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence was signed in Charlotte, North Carolina. In 1802, by the law of the 20th of May, 1802, Napoleon Bonaparte reinstated slavery in the French colonies, revoking its abolition in the French Revolution. In 1813, Napoleon Bonaparte led his French troops into the Battle of Bautzen in Saxony, Germany, against the combined armies of Russia and Prussia. The battle ended the next day with a French victory. In 1840, York Minster was badly damaged by fire. In 1861, the American Civil War, the state of Kentucky proclaimed its neutrality, which would last until September the 3rd, when Confederate forces entered the state. Meanwhile, the state of the North Carolina seceded from the Union. In 1862, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln signed the Homestead Act into law. In 1864, the American Civil War Battle of Ware Bottom Church in the Virginia-Bermuda 100 campaign. 10,000 troops fought in this Confederate victory. In 1873, Levi Strauss and Jacob Davis received a U.S. patent for blue jeans with copper rivets. In 1875, the signing of the Meter Convention by 17 nations, leading to the establishment of the International System of Units. In 1882, the Triple Alliance between German Empire, Austria-Hungary, and the Kingdom of Italy was formed. In 1883, Krakatoa began to erupt. The volcano exploded 3 months later, killing more than 36,000 people. In 1884, Dinzulu Kakechwe became king of the Zulu nation. In 1891, in the history of cinema, the first public display of Thomas Edison's prototype kinetoscope. In 1896, the 6-ton chandelier of the Palais Garnier fell on the crowd below, resulting in the death of one and the injury of many others. 1899, the first traffic ticket in the United States, New York City taxi driver Jacob German was arrested for speeding while driving 12 miles per hour on Lexington Street. He started it. In 1902, Cuba gained independence from the United States. Thomas Estrada Palma became the country's first president. 1908, Budi Utomo organization was founded in the Dutch East Indies, beginning the Indonesian National Awakening. 1920, Montreal, Quebec radio station XWA broadcast the first regularly scheduled radio programming in North America. In 1927, the Treaty of Jeddah, the United Kingdom recognized the sovereignty of King Ibn Saud in the Kingdom of Hijaz and Najd, which later merged to become the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And also 1927, at 7:52, Charles Lindbergh took off from Roosevelt Field in Long Island, New York, on the world's first solo non-stop flight across the Atlantic. He touched down at La Bourget Field in Paris at 22:22 the next day. Also, in 1932, Amelia Earhart took off from Newfoundland to begin the world's first solo non-stop flight across the Atlantic Ocean by a female pilot, landing in Ireland the next day. In 1940, from the Holocaust, the first prisoners arrived at a new concentration camp at Auschwitz. And in 1964, the discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation by Robert Woodrow Wilson and Arno Penzias, the discovery was initially very scary for U.S. scientists, who hypothesized that the Soviet Union had a base on the far side of the moon, which was nuclear-powered. But then they realized it was more profound, and evidence of a Big Bang hypothesized by Einstein. And in 1965, PIA Flight 705 of Pakistan and International Airlines Boeing 720-040B crashed while descending to land at Cairo International Airport, killing 121 of the 127 passengers and crew.